website. For a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, sorry. There is also an automatic external defibrillator available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. We'll begin with the Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Friend, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to resolutions. Resolutions D through H. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Does that include adjournment?
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next, we'll move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner
We're
Friend,
starting with the county commissioners right now.
Those on Zoom, could you please mute?
Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Present. Item minutes and claims. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. And there are also minutes from the pre-board meeting on Monday, November 8th, 2021 that are available on our website. And item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve A and B? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
And we're going to move the recognition and proclamations up next before the consent. So the first resolution is recognizing and supporting the Anti-Defamation League Plain States Region's second annual Walk Against Hate on November 28th, 2021. And this is brought to us by Commissioners Kavanaugh, Boyle, and Garcia. I don't know who wants to start the conversation.
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I'd also like to recognize Commissioner Rogers as a co-sponsor on this, and thank my colleagues for joining in. The Anti-Defamation League is an organization whose slogan is fighting hate for good, and I think in today's world we all can get behind that. We are coming up on Thanksgiving, and we should be thankful for what we have as a community and a society here, and that's predicated on cooperation rather than conflict. I think we can all get around that idea as well. We have with us today Mr. Gary Notchman, who's the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League, who will be receiving this and give us a little background on the Walk Against Hate, which is coming up. I've participated in this over the last couple of years, and it's a laudable effort to remind us of the struggle for human rights that has taken place in our community. The sayings is that you think global and act local, and brave men and women over the history of our community have stood up for equal rights for all, and that's essentially the motivating factor of the Walk Against Hate. We have a resolution here that I'd just like to quickly read, and then maybe some of my colleagues would like to comment, and we'd ask Mr. Notchman to come up and officially receive this for the Anti-Defamation League. The resolution reads, Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, whereas as one of America's leading anti-bias and anti-hate organizations, the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, mission is to secure justice and fair treatment for all. And whereas on Sunday, November 28th, 2021, the ADL Plains State Region will hold its second annual Walk Against Hate, and whereas leading up to the November 28th Walk Against Hate, the ADL will unveil several local sites that reflect the historic, diverse journey through which our civil rights and civil liberties have evolved in the Omaha metropolitan area. And whereas people will have the opportunity to physically or virtually visit each of the sites and appreciate how the ground many of us walk on has memory and meaning. And whereas Douglas County joins the ADL initiative to support civil peace, justice, equality, and reconciliation in our society. And whereas Douglas County supports the ADL in its opposition to prejudice and discrimination on the basis of race, creed, gender, lifestyle, or free expression. And whereas Douglas County supports the ADL's Walk Against Hate and its goal to bring us together as a better, stronger, and more inclusive community, state, and nation. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that the board hereby recognizes and supports the ADL's second annual Walk Against Hate and encourages the residents of Douglas County to participate in the walk on November 28, 2021, dated this 23rd day of November 2021. I would move for the adoption of this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
And any further comments from board members? Commissioner Boyle?
I think this is an easy resolution to get behind. I think we have to fundamentally think about the good in everybody and really what the Anti-Defamation League stands for. So even in their own information they provide on the website, they say, we will expose bigotry for what it is, whether it's cloaked in political rhetoric, academic theories, or calls for boycotts. We don't care how you vote, but we do care what you value. We are principled, not political. We choose action, not sides. In 1913, our founders understood that America would only be safe for its Jews if it was safe for all its people. And since then, we have defended American values like dignity, equality, justice, and fair treatment for us all. So I thank you for that. Again, I'm very proud to be co-sponsoring with this with Commissioner Kavanaugh and the others. And so we appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia?
I would briefly just add that one of the stops for this walk against hate is at the GI Forum in District 1, an organization that has fought for the rights of Hispanic veterans for many, many decades. And also would like to add that actually was an intern for the ADL here in the Plains States back in like 2007, many moons ago, and got to see firsthand the great work that they do. So very proud to be supporting this organization and this resolution.
Thank you. All right, any other comments from board members? There is someone here that is wanting to speak. Go ahead and come forward, please.
Yes, Mr. Gary Notchwood is the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League in the Great Plains.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Gary Nachman. I am the Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League, Plains States Region. And I am honored to be here this morning. To the honorable co-sponsors of this resolution, I thank you. I want to thank you for recognizing the importance of civil peace, justice, equality, and inclusion with this proclamation, recognizing our second Walk Against Hate, a journey of allies. It is recognition of the rich diversity that comprises our community and a clarion call to explore every facet of our history in the search for a meaningful direction forward. The Anti-Defamation League, as you've heard, has a mission to combat anti-Semitism, hate, and bigotry, and to secure justice and fair treatment to all people. As an anti-hate organization serving all marginalized communities, we center our work on education. By valuing the importance of truth-telling, examining past wrongs becomes something more than a history lesson. It becomes a means to understand and celebrate our neighbors and ourselves. This year's event is especially meaningful as it coincides with the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. As we look for ways to honor the holiday, we join the thousands who took the walk against hate last year and shine the light of knowledge, giving attention to others' often overlooked experiences. The Walk Against Hate will be celebrating the very things that make Douglas County a culturally diverse and continually evolving place to write our own stories. I thank you again for your support and for this proclamation, and I hope you all join us in our Walk Against Hate.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the item? With that, there is a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll just finish up the recognition and proclamations. There's a recognition for the following retired employee, Bonnie Atkinson, who worked at the Douglas County Treasurer's Office for 38 years. My understanding is she will not be present, but we want to wish her a happy retirement and thank her for her work for the Douglas County citizens. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, are you voting yes? Yes. You just go ahead. Motion passes 7-0.
Next is a resolution proclaiming November 30th, 2021 as Giving Tuesday 402 in Douglas County. This is encouraging all citizens to give back to the community in any way that is personally meaningful. And I'll just read the resolution real quick. We do this every year. Whereas Giving Tuesday 402 is the Omaha Metro's local celebration of the Global Giving Tuesday, established as a National Day of Giving on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving. And whereas Giving Tuesday 402 is an opportunity for us all to give what we can and do what's needed for hundreds of local causes. And whereas Giving Tuesdays 402 is a day to prove the power of the Metro, and whereas it is fitting and proper on Giving Tuesday 402 and on every day to recognize the tremendous impact of philanthropy, volunteerism, and community service in Douglas County. And whereas Giving Tuesday 402 is an opportunity to encourage citizens to give not only dollars but service to others, every act of generosity is powerful. Now therefore be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby proclaims November 30th, 2021 is Giving Tuesday 402 in Douglas County and encourages all citizens to join together to give back to the community in any way that is personally meaningful. Dated this 23rd day of November 2021. And I do believe we have, Kate, yep, okay. Kate, you want to go ahead and, well, first, do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, commissioners, for recognizing the importance of Giving Tuesday, this largest giving day of the year. In Douglas County, it's the opportunity for us to put boots on the ground and get out and volunteer, to give to those causes that we care about, to vote with our dollars about the nonprofits that we want to support here locally. So with over 600 nonprofits supported on this powerful day, thank you for recognizing the opportunity to each of us give a little bit and swell together to propel these vital nonprofits into a more powerful 2022. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. With that, any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move back to the consent agenda, items A through N. Is there a motion to approve? Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I was just looking at item B6, authorization to use eminent domain to acquire necessary property interests as part of the county project for 66th Street improvements, track 9. I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about the eminent
Yeah.
domain needed for this.
Yeah, Dan Kudalek is with us this morning. Dan?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm here with Tom Lund, who is our right-of-way acquisition personnel with the Douglas County Engineer. This project, just a little background, is as a result of a subdivision being proposed called Ponca Hills Estates. It's on 66th Street, just north of Northern Hills Drive, which is currently a gravel road. As part of the subdivision agreement with the city that the developer signed in September of 2020, he was required to work with Douglas County to pave 66th Street from Northern Hills Drive adjacent to his subdivision, which is typical. So we did enter into an agreement with the developer on June 8th, 2021 to cost share in that improvement. And our cost share is the portion that is just north of his subdivision, about 400 feet to the end of the gravel road, the public road, basically. And that's where Charlotte Tripp's property is located. It's a 3 intersection type private streets that tie into 66th Street, and we're proposing to pave up to those 3 driveways and build a little cul-de-sac to allow the public to be able to turn around safely. So condemnation was unfortunately required because we were not getting responses from Charlotte. So Tom, maybe you could explain what you've done to this point.
Okay. I first visited with Charlotte in July, sent her the letter about the work to be done. And I met her like 2 weeks later, and we had a nice meeting out there at the circle. She wanted us to move the whole intersection to the west. I said, we can't do that. That's not possible. So she decided, well, let me get back with you and see what we want to do. And I would call her every 3 weeks, and she didn't have an answer. She said, we haven't decided what to do on this, Tom. So we did figure out that the gate's going to be out in a circle, so we're going to pay her $2,000 for that gate, and she was happy about that. So she just never has given me an answer what she wants, and I told her that we need to move this forward. So we're going to have to send a 10-day letter to you about going on to the condemnation action. She said that's fine.
So when you do the eminent domain, will she get some type of payment? You said for the gate, but will she get other payment to compensate her for the land that we're taking?
Yes, what the offer was.
Okay, I was just curious of the circumstances. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, thanks you guys for the information. Dan, can you tell me, is eminent domain required? Let me give you a quick hypothetical, because I run into, as you well know, because I've talked to you about it on occasion, I will particularly run into some of these issues up in Ponca Hills. Let's say there's a minimum maintenance road in Ponca Hills, and let's say there's 15 or 20 people living in a particular area right along that minimum maintenance road. Is eminent domain required in order to pave a road like that if the traffic studies show that it needs to be paved. Is eminent domain required to get that road repaired? And if you don't do it, then those 15 or 20 residents have to pay for the upgrade to that road? Am I off the beam here, or how would that work? And
Well, look, clarification, this hypothetical road, or maybe it's a real road, is it on the county road system, or is it in a unincorporated subdivision?
yeah, I said it was a hypothetical, but it's really not. I mean, I know there are 15 or 16 people living on a minimum maintenance road right on 53rd. Now, I don't know what the traffic studies show, but they've been told that if they're going to get that road paved, then all of those residents essentially have to pay for the paving of the road. I guess that's my question. So can eminent domain actually be used to I don't know who you'd acquire that property from. I don't know who actually owns it. Do the people that live in that area actually share ownership of that minimum maintenance road? You know what I mean?
I'd have to do a little research on the history of the road. It could be a public road that was dedicated at the turn of the century as a public road. You know, that happened back in that era. But sounds like if there's only 15 residents living on the road, you know, the county, and it is a county road, say, we would not prioritize, that would not be a priority for us to do. The traffic count would be so low, it'd be hard to justify the expense of paving the road for a few homes. So, you know, they can form, you know, a rural improvement district if they wanted it paved that badly, and they can pay for it themselves through a process that we've done in the past. But the county, it would be difficult for the county to start paving very low volume roads at our expense. And we have so many other projects that are much higher priority.
Okay, I didn't mean to spring that on you. I was just curious, and we can take it offline, but thank you for that helps quite a bit. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments on either A6 or any other consent items? All right, we had a motion. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. We do have an item on consent, and it's item N, which is a amendment to the Fraternal Order of Police contract that allows for the payment of an additional $5 an hour in premium pay to sheriff's officers as a result of their being on the front line during the pandemic. And this is something I have supported for a long time, and I'm glad to see it's coming today. Thank you.
There is a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next, we'll move to citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber or on Zoom that would like to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. I decided today that since Thanksgiving is right away, I'd wear my American Heritage shirt and talk about that a little bit, because we've had lots of community partners and stakeholders and proclamations and resolutions about the history of racism and who's still guilty of that. And I want to remind people that things got skipped over in history on a lot of those things, because I believe Egypt, ancient Egypt, had slaves even before Moses was there as a slave, and his people were slaves there. Jumping forward to 1619, there was a slave ship that dropped off somebody on the North American continent that had slaves on it, but a lot of those slaves were put into slavery by their own people in Africa. But we got blamed for that, and that was the start of our country. But although it was not the start of our country, we were not a country in 1619 or 1620 when the Pilgrims landed. Excuse me. On that ship, the Pilgrims were actually escaping some form of religious slavery over in Europe. I am led to believe that I had a relative on my mother's side of the family on that ship. They were greeted at one day by an Indian, I forget what tribe, but his name was Squanto. Squanto himself was an escaped slave from another Indian tribe. Common practice among the Indians, by the way. Fast forward to the South, slavery in the South. In the South, there wasn't a whole lot of slavery in the North, was there? Indentured servants, yes, that's a form of slavery. But we've had a lot of proclamations even on the courthouse lawn out here. And I one day collected a bag that must have weighed 20 pounds of literature about everything wrong with our culture and our history, and it's still present. We're still guilty of it, but nobody gets arrested for being guilty of it. People need to find the people that are causing all this racism and stuff and process them, prosecute them. So there are lots of proclamations by people you haven't heard of right here in River City. We heard about hate today, centering in on the Jewish people that were treated pretty damn poorly, weren't they? Weren't a lot of people speaking out about that at the time either. But anyway, that's some of my comments, except that all of that is in things like this that are put out by community columnists, community newspaper people. I'm just a citizen. But I'm putting my 2 words in today to combat all of this that fights against me and other citizens, to change our culture. Our culture is one of the best cultures ever known in history. People need to teach that. Thank you. Oh, thank you for getting some better looking escorts in the chambers.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to our presentation, our COVID-19 update and COVID-19 vaccination plan update presented by Dr. Lindsay Hughes. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. First, I want to start out by thanking all of you for being such a great board and for really always having the best interests of this community in heart. That's something that has really struck me since I arrived here, and I am just so grateful to be able to serve you and to have the opportunity to be up here every week to talk to you. So thank you for being so supportive of public health and also just caring so much about your community. All right. I wish that I had better news for you today, but we are continuing to see our rates go up here in Douglas County for COVID-19. Right now we're sitting at 253.1 per 100,000 for a 7-day total. If you're looking at the graphic, you can see that we are now sitting higher than we were at the previous high point for this Delta wave, if you will. So we are continuing to watch that and certainly hoping that the efforts that are underway to vaccinate both the public with boosters and also get people who are between the ages of 5 and 11 vaccinated with their initial series. We have that all underway, and we're very much hoping that those efforts, along with encouraging other measures, will blunt this spike. And hopefully we can keep it from going as high as we did last year. Currently, cases here in Douglas County are still occurring pretty heavily in our pediatric population. So I'll zoom this in even more for you. It's just easier. So as you recall, green and down, so green, light green, yellow, and orange represent ages 0 to 19, which is basically our school age kids. And as you can see, the numbers there have continued to increase steadily. And if you also take a look up here into the light blue, which is the age 30 to 39 group, we've also seen some fairly significant growth there in the past week. So a lot of what we're seeing continues to be transmission in school settings. We also think that the increase with 30 to 39 also is including those parents of kids who are bringing it home, and also teachers in the school systems that are might be catching from kids or bringing it into the schools. We continue to see transmission really in that setting, and we're still working with the schools to get those numbers under control and make sure if there are clusters or outbreaks happening there, that we're addressing those as quickly as possible. For the weekly map, in terms of where cases are occurring, you can, sorry about that. You can see where our hotspots are right now. So Elkhorn, 68116, 68135, and 68134 are our highest case counts. And then we continue to have a fair number of cases that are occurring countywide other than those hotspots as well. In terms of hospitalizations, we continue to have very, very high numbers for hospitalizations. In fact, this is something that we've really been stressing anytime we're able to talk to the news or talk to, there was a press conference that the Nebraska Association of Local Health Directors held yesterday to talk about vaccines and hospital rates. This is really something that continues to concern us all. As you know, if hospitals are full, there's nowhere to get care, regardless of whether that's COVID or not. So that's something we continue to be concerned about. You can see with the graph on the right that we have had now many data points that are up above 90%. And so that is something that is very concerning for us. And just as a reminder, if we're saying that our capacity is at 90%, that doesn't mean that every single hospital has 10% of their beds open. We certainly have hospital systems that have 0 beds. We continue to hear reports about people having to board in the emergency departments when they should be up on a floor receiving care. Emergency departments are typically not set up for anything but stabilizing patients. So that is not the best environment for them to be in. They really should be on a floor where they can receive continued care as needed. And we continue to hear that our healthcare providers are also caring for more patients than they typically would be assigned. So for instance, if, on an ICU unit, a nurse is typically given 2 patients to take care of, we're hearing in many instances that they're taking care of 3 or 4 patients rather than what their ratio should be, which is, of course, concerning. Over on the left, you can see that we've had quite a spike with our ICU capacity. So right now, we're still sitting up in the higher 80s and sometimes in the 90s for capacity on our ICUs. Pediatric ICU yesterday was reported at 92%, so pediatric hospitalizations are also something that we're watching very closely. And then ventilator usage it looks like it has tapered off, although still sitting up in the 30s. And of course, that's an indication of severity of disease that can be occurring. So keeping an eye on that as well. But suffice to say, we have high community transmission, and our hospitalizations are very much higher than we want to see them. And hoping that the community will see that and take seriously that whether it's COVID, a heart attack, a car accident, there is very little capacity for care right now. And so anything that can be done to control transmission in the community is going to open up hospital beds for those other people in the community who might need it. This is preventable, so as much as we're able to prevent, that would be very much in everyone's best interests. We did add a few deaths over the past week, predominantly unvaccinated. With those, breakthrough cases are up to 1.9%. Again, this is not surprising and shouldn't surprise anybody. As we know that vaccine efficacy does wane over time, obviously that's why boosters have been approved. So as we're now giving boosters, that number should either stabilize or continue to kind of float where it is or even go down. So we are seeing people come in for boosters for sure, so that's promising. Of course, we still want people to get their initial dose. So if there are people who still haven't gotten their initial series of vaccination, we really, really recommend that they get that done. It's a little late to get your immunity built up for Thanksgiving since that's Thursday, but you can still get most of your immunity built up before Christmas. So let's talk about vaccinations. We did have to close our drive-through clinic at the CHI Center this past week because of repeated acts of vandalism that occurred there. And so we are looking for alternate sites to continue having that drive-through. We were seeing numbers 90 to 100 per clinic coming through, so it was a fairly popular area or means to get vaccinated. Unfortunately, because of the vandalism that was happening there, it's not tenable to keep it there. So we are looking at some other sites in North Omaha to continue holding that. As you can see here, we've had a spike in vaccinations given, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We continue to see our numbers go up, so we're happy about that. Keep in mind that this is cumulative doses, so this does include those booster doses that are out there. Right now, 59% of our residents here in Douglas County are vaccinated. If you're just looking at 12 and up, since they've been eligible the longest, we're at 71.4. So we're getting there, but we're getting there slowly. So people, if you haven't gotten your vaccine, please come see us. For the 12 to 17-year-olds, you can see that those numbers tapered off after our initial authorization there. They're sitting at 59.6% fully vaccinated though. So our adolescents are increasing in vaccination numbers, so we're glad to see that. 66.3% of those have had just the one dose. And here is how we are doing with our 5 to 11s. So far, we've given 10,427 doses to our pediatric patients. 18.4% is what we're sitting at for percentage of that population in Douglas County that is currently having that one dose. Don't worry too much about this 0.04% over on the right, because over the next few weeks, you're going to see that number go up pretty significantly as this first wave who just got their first vaccine will be getting their second and be considered fully vaccinated. So because it's so early in our vaccine efforts, don't worry too much about that one. That will change. So we are very proud of this 18.4% number. That's really been a great effort on the part of our community to get these kiddos in. And we hope to continue to see that number just climb and climb. All right, and then looking at our vaccination map, there is nothing surprising here. This continues to look about the same as it has, so our Elkhorn and Bennington corridor still is sitting above 68.7% vaccinated. The further east, the lower that number goes. So we are still concentrating a lot of efforts on North and South Omaha to get our residents their fully vaccinated. That is a concerted effort with Douglas County Health Department and our partners to really get messaging out, answer questions for people who are still feeling some hesitancy, and make sure that we're able to get those people in. At this point, those adults who haven't been in yet to get their vaccinations, it's really just a matter of, as time passes, people I think, will feel more comfortable, are feeling more comfortable. So we are seeing people who, were hesitant before that have now decided, okay, I think I feel okay enough now with this to come in and get that vaccine. And so while it's not huge numbers, they are trickling in. And I think that's just going to be kind of a slow effort, unfortunately. So we'll keep talking about it. We'll keep educating people on this vaccine and how it works and the safety and efficacy of it. We do continue to see misinformation and disinformation in the public around these vaccines. And when we do hear about that, we try to just provide the facts around that. So that is where we are right now with our vaccination efforts. Just so people can also see this, I will also pull up the vaccination sites for you. So you can see here, this is for this week and next week. This is basically what's occurring for Douglas County Health Department. So keep in mind, the FQHCs are also administering and have their own schedules. We may also have some closed pods occurring, and those aren't reflected here because they would just be for, a set of maybe employees at an organization or something like that. So that's not reflected here since they're not open to the public, but we do have all of our public vaccine clinics here. One thing that I wanted to point out is that these vaccine clinics you'll see over to the right who the age groups are that are eligible for these vaccines at these particular clinics, and whether a single vaccine is being offered or not. And then I just also wanted to note that appointments are really helpful, but they're not necessary. So they help us plan for capacity for these clinics, but by all means, if you notice that there is a vaccine clinic that's happening at a school or a facility near you, and it sounds like a good idea, please stop by. You do not have to make an appointment first to come in and do that. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Thanks for this. I note on the graph here that our positivity rate appears to be rather high. What's the exact percentage on that?
Let me look and see. We are at 11.1%.
11%.
I think a couple of weeks ago when I was here, it was at 9%. So we're definitely seeing increases in our positivity.
Okay. And that's not good, but it's better to know than not. So on this graph, there are two actual graphs, weekly percentage of positivity tests and weekly percentage of positivity tests. It says the same, but one is parentheses people over people method, and the other is test over test method. I think we've touched on this before, but the first one appears to be in the mid to high 30%, the weekly percent of positivity rate.
Right.
And that's the people over people method.
Correct.
And the other one appears to be what you're talking about, the 11% range, and that's the test over test method. So just real quickly, what's the difference?
Sure. So the people over people method, and if anybody gets really bored and wants to read this in depth, you can click on next to that, and it'll actually pop up the definitions for you so that you can actually see these definitions. And we try to include these. Wherever we can. So the people over people method is higher and I'm hoping I'm going to get this right because sometimes I still mix them up a little bit. But basically, what happens with your people over people is that if a person comes in and gets multiple tests, we're going to count every single time they do that. A test over test is really just counting the individual test. So that is going to, on one hand, drive up. So the people over people, you're going to see a higher rate, whereas the test over test, which is really what most of our counties here in Nebraska look at, which is why I usually report that one to you as well. That test over test is going to be, it's going to appear lower. So it's just two different ways of counting the same thing. As long as you're looking, kind of at the same one from week to week, you're in good shape. So typically I'm reporting the test over test to you, but if you ever wonder about those trends, you can always pop in here and see that the people over people, it does change a bit depending on how much people, if you have people who are testing over and over and over again. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I note that as you mentioned, the deaths from COVID in Douglas County since the onset of the pandemic are now estimated at 853. And I think you said those were up by 3 in the last week?
I have to go back and count, but 3 over the past few days. I think since like Thursday is what I've seen. And then we definitely are seeing at least 5 to 10, occasionally even more than that are reported to us each week. Just keep in mind that that's not that they died at that particular time. It takes time for us to get those death certificates. So those deaths could have occurred a week or 2 ago, depending on how long it took for us to get that.
Yeah, that's really sad. And, the takeaway on people should get vaccinated comes down to that, and the positive cases, which you have listed as 91,600 out of
1 minute.
population of 500 and some thousand in Douglas County?
Right, 500 and, 74 or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Very high percentage there as well. Regarding the kids, I just want to point out that's good progress from 0 to where we are and going forward. I was in a shop the other day, and there was a little kid there who was very proudly showing everybody the Band-Aid on his arm, and very proud of the fact that he had gotten a vaccination, and he was, as he said, gonna be well.
I love it.
And so kudos on the efforts there.
Thank you.
The vaccination sites that you showed up here indicate that
Time.
we'll come back.
You bet.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle.
Thank you. Just a few things. First, I want to get on my soapbox again and say that the hospitalization issue really bothers me because I'm seeing that when I'm at my job too. And we all have to remember that it's true. Some people will not be able to come in, and that gets scary because some people have to come in. I'm an obstetrician, so if you say you don't have a bed for a woman in labor, what do you do? Is she not going to be able to enter the door of the hospital? I mean, if you physically don't have a bed. So now, to be honest with you, we're a specialty unit, so we will make room for our obstetrical patients. But bottom line is that's the type of thing that in the rural hospitals they're dealing with because they don't have specialty units. And so just make sure those are the types of circumstances that affect me on a regular basis. And so I just want to point out that this is a huge deal, that our hospitals are, number one, at over 90% capacity. But number two, remember, the staff. There is really, honestly, a nursing shortage. And so, and not just nurses, it's really all hospital staff. It's the burnout, but it's also just opportunities for better pay at other places. And so there truly is a huge shortage. And we're really in crisis mode. I think that we're trying to get that message out, but I'm here to get that message out again. And so on that one, I also have to say that at my hospital, every week I get a really very great visual about the numbers of hospitalized patients with COVID. It talks about those that are vaccinated and those that are not vaccinated. And yes, there are a lot of vaccinated folks in the hospital. But then you look at the ICU numbers. So that's hospital admissions, and you got ICU numbers. The number of ICU numbers, it starts to trend more. So it's the unvaccinated in the hospital. Then you get the ICU patients on ventilators. Most of the time, there's no one on a ventilator who's been vaccinated. And those that are tend to be young, like 30s, 40s, 50s. So just to make the point, the unvaccinated are really at the most risk for to end up on a ventilator. And that's what I see in the hospital numbers that are decimated out to me as a clinician. So anyway, off the soapbox. So back to a couple other things. Do you know how many deaths are of those who have been vaccinated?
Of those who have been vaccinated, deaths. So that number kind of changes from day to day, but it generally is sitting, so vaccinated deaths, like 15%. Usually we're 80 to 85% unvaccinated for deaths. So just to be clear, for anybody listening, unvaccinated deaths are most common in the hospital. So about 80 to 85% is what we're seeing.
And I think that's concordant with what I see in the statistics that my hospital gives me, is that, and those that tend to be vaccinated tend to be elderly. And from what I was seeing, just maybe even male. And so it's just an interesting little statistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then a couple other things. One is as far as the vaccinations go, you mentioned that new first-timers are kind of trickling in. Is there a percentage of that, like 1 or 2% of them are new?
You know, we're not breaking it down necessarily. I couldn't tell you what the exact statistic is of those who are coming in for their first time series at this point. I could certainly get that for you, though. I think we can break our data down that way.
I think it's pretty obvious to us there's a segment of the population that just will not get vaccinated. So if that's the case, then we go to masking as our second line of defense.
Yes.
Do you have any statements to make regarding masking in our community?
Yeah, absolutely. So especially coming up on the holidays, you know, wearing a mask when you're indoors and around unvaccinated people, or when you're in crowds, still remains extremely important. This is still a useful tool for us as we continue to vaccinate the public. We're not at a rate yet in our entire community that's providing coverage that gets our rates down, you know, down to the moderate or low levels. So using masks is a very simple, easy way, cheap way to slow transmission as well. So I do not think it's time to recommend people take their masks off. I think this is an even more crucial time that we pay attention to measures such as that as we're going into the holidays.
So you think we should be wearing our masks when we're going to the grocery store or just being with family? Or
Yes, absolutely. You know, if your family is all vaccinated, you might be able to do without in a small gathering, but otherwise, masks on is the best way to protect your loved ones.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Just following up on this vaccination site, I noted that on what has become known as Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, it doesn't appear that there are any vaccination sites, which is, I guess, a question in my mind. There's going to be loads of people out there. It would seem to be a great time to get people vaccinated. I don't know. Are there any sites anywhere in Douglas County on Black Friday?
More than likely, you'll still be able to get those at retail pharmacies. You know, there may be other providers that are open that day that will provide them. My staff, however, are tired and they deserve their holiday weekend off, so I will not be changing that.
Regarding that, and following up on Commissioner Boyle's noting the nursing shortage, the head of the National Association of Nurses was on NPR yesterday talking about this very point, and opined that part of it is that the nurses are not compensated adequately and that they are overworked and understaffed, and that if those things were addressed, that there was a lot of nurses who are on the sidelines right now simply because they don't want to work 60 hours a week and they're not satisfied with the compensation packages that are available. And I know that we are working at the Douglas County Health Center to address some of that with our healthcare staff there. And it's, incumbent on all of us, I think, to see what we can do to help the people, like we did earlier this morning with giving premium pay of an additional $5 an hour to our public safety staff, to adequately compensate and staff up as much as possible our healthcare staff, so that they aren't underpaid, overworked, and understaffed. And those things, in addition to hopefully getting the educational institutions that actually educate our new nursing and healthcare staff, educated and certified, maybe ramped up as well, are all things that were mentioned by this head of the Nursing Association nationally as things that we should do, but not to overlook the fact there are lots of nurses who simply are not going to subject themselves to current working conditions, that if those were changed, that would make a difference. And I know from practicing law in the public sphere that understaffing is a chronic problem in public services. That if we get a rush on, and you've certainly seen this in your department, because of an emergency like the pandemic, that people are just overwhelmed. As you indicated, your folks need a holiday.
Yep.
And I watching them over the last year and a half, I'm not at all arguing against that, because of the influx of all of the COVID cases and how that lands on your staff and the healthcare staff at Douglas County Health Center. I just point this out because it's something that we're trying to address right now, and I hope that in the near future we'll be able to do for some of those people, some of the things that we've been trying to do in other areas to alleviate the understaffing, which results in the overwork, and people get tired. They're only human. So.
Thank you for that. And I just want to interject very quickly that public health nurses are usually some of the lowest paid nursing specialists in the country. So I hope that you'll just take that into consideration when you're talking about that.
That's a great point, because
One minute.
what do we want from our government services? And I think public health is something that we all really want. And I see other areas of the government that we put lots of resources in that really maybe aren't up to the same thing. So maybe it's a critical analysis that comes out of this pandemic that allow us to recalibrate some of these priorities and concentrate on what the people really want and need. As you indicated, public health. I mean, we all value our health pretty much over almost everything. And particularly in this pandemic, it's come to light that there are, some things that we could do better, I guess you would say. And
if you have a robust public health infrastructure, and keeping in mind public health nurses are the largest proportion of your public health workforce, we protect the rest of the healthcare system. We help keep capacity down in hospitals. We help keep the community healthy so that they don't have to use those resources as much.
Time.
thank you.
Commissioner
Happy
Garcia.
Thanksgiving.
I had a question related to the hospital capacity.
Sure.
Kind of situation we're in. I remember that at the height of the pandemic last year, many cities were kind of doing backup locations with extra beds, like convention centers, and like going to more extreme measures because of the situation with hospital capacity. I'm just wondering if we have those kind of backup plans here, and if we're reaching kind of that breaking point where, if we reach 95%, then we definitely need to do something like that. And you had mentioned that some kind of health directors association or healthcare association had met recently. I wonder if they had talked about something like that. So I know some of this is beyond our direct jurisdiction, but obviously it's a part of the larger healthcare ecosystem. So I was just wondering where everything is on that.
Absolutely. So we actually meet 2 to 3 times a week. So we actually have that discussion fairly frequently as well, along with meeting with our healthcare coalitions, who gather a lot of that hospital data and report that to us. So yes is the answer. However, we go back to staffing. So for instance, Nebraska Med was talking about opening kind of a surge floor, if you will, But keep in mind, then you have to also have people who can staff that surge, which is a huge challenge. So, we have plans for that. But if you don't have the capacity in terms of manpower, you just don't have the capacity. There's a transfer center that was stood up by the governor's office to basically kind of have a centralized system where, if you have people who need to be transferred out, you can kind of call this place and they will try to find a bed for you. It's a great idea. Unfortunately, all of the regional hospitals are kind of in the same boat, so it's very difficult still to find a bed, even with the plans that we do have in place. Unfortunately, it comes down to staffing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
You bet.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
Yeah, just a couple more things. One is, as far as the younger kids getting vaccinated, can you just talk about the reception from parents?
Absolutely. So we have kind of people on both sides there. So we have a lot of people who are just so excited to get their kids vaccinated that are coming in, and it's such a joy to see. And these kids are excited to be part of the solution, to be vaccinated and know that they're going to be safer to be around their grandparents, or if they have sick people in their family, or even just their classmates. They don't want to think that they would get their friends sick. So we're seeing a lot of kids that are just really proud to have gone through that. We also see some hesitancy, where people continue to not want to get their children vaccinated. And we're gonna just continue to educate those. Of course, when you're looking at school policies for exclusion for sick kids, immunization, the vaccination is going to come into play later in the year regarding that. I can't tell you any plans yet because we're still talking about all of those and working with our superintendents around those plans. But vaccination status of kids it's gonna make a difference.
I know that when kids enter kindergarten, they have to have a whole batch of vaccinations, and some are optional, some not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious down the road, and you don't have to speak to this at all, but whether COVID will end up being on that required one before you can have your child enter school.
Yeah,
So
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, since it's they're not quite there yet.
Right.
But it will be interesting to see if that comes down at some point.
And then just one other thing, do you have it's crystal ball time? So as far as looking at hospitalizations with RSV and flu and all of that winter coming, I know that a lot of the beds at Children's are full of RSV kids.
Yes.
Do you see when that surge will kind of be tapering off? Because there's a time component that typically isn't there.
Yeah, there is. So this is the typical time of year. This and maybe even into like January, February is really kind of your typical peak time for RSV. So we could be seeing, this kind of surge with RSV happening into early spring. And then hopefully cases will start to die out. So unfortunately, what's happened is we had this delayed wave from last year that's now bumping up against kind of its normal seasonality. And flu is, we have the potential for the flu to be the same, not just in kids, but across the entire population, seeing our normal flu year occurring. Depending on how that spike goes or how that, typical season goes, you can now have people who will be potentially having both influenza infections and COVID infections, which is, I would imagine, quite a disaster for someone's respiratory system and really entire body to be fighting both of those at the same time.
I'm really curious to see what happens with flu season, just because last year it was almost non-existent because everybody was wearing masks or not out and about.
Right.
So, but from what you're saying here, it sounds like as far as our hospitalization capacity, our hospital capacity, it's probably not going to get any better until February, March because of the RSV and flu.
Yeah, I think right now what we're seeing, until we get a lot more of our population vaccinated against COVID, and RSV finishes its typical thing, and then we've got the flu coming in too. I would predict that our hospitalization numbers are going to remain high, at least for a couple of more months. That is really, really hard to say, knowing what that means for my brothers and sisters in healthcare. who are really struggling right now, and just to tell them that they got to hang on for a little bit longer. And, you know, from the public health perspective, we're going to continue to do our best to put in place those, you know, the things that can help them have some relief down the road.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Hughes, do we have, I didn't have a chance to get on the dashboard to see this. Do we have a zip code for the kids being vaccinated, where they're being vaccinated?
We don't yet. I think we're trying to put that together. We just haven't.
Okay.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Well, it's, I mean,
But yeah.
I would just be curious as to where, and if it's, I think we can have a correlation that those that are hesitant are also going to be hesitant with getting their children, but I would like to see that by the zip code areas.
Right, yeah, so at this point, they're being rolled into the total.
Okay.
They would be rolled into the total.
Okay, all right. No other questions or comments? Anyone else wishing to comment? Well, thank you, Dr. Hughes.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you as well. I hope you have a blessed holiday.
You too. With that, we will move on. We have a public hearing, and the public hearing is to permit discussion and the presentation of testimony regarding the proposed revision to the Department of General Assistance guidelines. And with us today is the Director of our General Assistance Department, Melissa Sedgwick. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Melissa Seawick, General Assistance Director. There's some copies. You can just open the first one. Two just in case. That's a PowerPoint, right? That one's just the PDF.
Take care.
All right, so every other year, Department of General Assistance is mandated by the state to have a review of our guidelines. And so that's what I'm here to present some of our proposals. But I wanted to first just give some information on our department just because we have some new board members. So our department is, the services we offer are mandated by the state, and each county within the state of Nebraska has to provide to the poor, and each county in Nebraska decides what exactly that means, who is poor, what services they provide, and then again, biennially, we come here and we revise the guidelines. So the general assistance programs that Douglas County offers are for individuals that are typically between the ages of 19 and 64 to 67, depending on when they can apply for Social Security. They are typically folks that are homeless, that have zero income, and they are without dependent children. They are folks that can't receive any assistance from the state or federal government. So we are kind of their only option. So the services we provide are shelter, which includes rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, non-food necessities voucher, which is a $25 monthly allowance that we give them, and a Dollar General card to provide personal hygiene, and then cleaning supplies and things like that they can purchase. And then every 6 months they get an $80 clothing voucher that they can use to purchase a coat, gloves, hats, things like that. We also provide bus tickets for our clients that are on our program, and this is just to help them get around to doctor's appointments, different appointments that we might have them go to. In non-pandemic setting, we did have job training that we had our clients participate in as well. We also have cremation assistance. So any person that would happen to pass away within Douglas County or be a resident of Douglas County that their family does not have means to provide the to pay for the cremation, they can apply and we can assist with that as well. And then we have what we call transportation outside of Douglas County. And so that's if you have somebody that has been in Douglas County less than 6 months that's looking to go back home, or they found a job in a different state, and we can go ahead and verify either setting, and we can go ahead and provide a bus ticket out back there. So sometimes that is working with Douglas County Corrections when somebody's being released and then getting them back home where they need to go to. It was asked in the HHS committee if somebody we can provide assistance for somebody to go to Thanksgiving with their family or a vacation or anything, and we cannot. It is strictly to get them back home or for a job. So this is just a 5-year snapshot of our client count. And so as you can see, in fiscal year 2021, we were just under 1,400 clients, which is down from 1617. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We are very much, our numbers are based on the economy, so we're really interested to see what our numbers look like once we kind of get out of this pandemic. But again, it's not necessarily a bad thing that the numbers are lower. And then just wanted to give a really quick overview of general assistance programs nationally. So we are one of 25 states that actually even have a general assistance program. And just like in Douglas County or in Nebraska, some of them are mandated through each county. Some of them are done by the state. And we are, in here there's a table that shows that we are rated number 2 as far as the maximum monthly benefits level. And I think we're number 1, not just because we're Douglas County, but when you look at what New Hampshire, who is marked number 1, they offer, it's only to those that are deemed unemployable. So anybody that's not able to work. Our assistance program is open to anybody that is employable or not employable. And we don't have any restrictions as far as time limits that they can be on our program. Obviously, the goal is to be a short-term assistance for them, but we do offer assistance as long as somebody meets the income and resource requirements. Okay, and then again, this is just our biennial guideline review. So during this process, we typically start in August, September, where we're reviewing our guidelines. We send out information to our community partners, vendors, landlords, different nonprofits, homeless shelters, asking for their feedback. Typically, the feedback we hear is just about how much we are able to assist with rent payments. This year, it's been pretty quiet. Again, we haven't really heard much feedback. We also post all of our guidelines in hard copy at our office, down here at the Civic Center, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and then the city clerk's offices of Bennington, Waterloo, Valley, and then all of the public libraries if anybody was interested in reviewing them. So I'm going to go over the provisions and then our recommendations. So the first proposal that we have as far as our guidelines is incorporating a sentence that says, provided that the director may suspend the strict application of these general provisions during the period of a local emergency or disaster. And that is with the approval of the Board of Commissioners. I think after what we encountered or are currently encountering with the pandemic, I think it's good language to go ahead and add in there. There were things that we had to adapt that were in our guidelines. One of them was we had in our guidelines that all of our interviews are done face-to-face. Well, with the pandemic, we went to phone interviews, and we did where they weren't face-to-face. And so it's just where that language is in there. So if we do have to veer off from what our guidelines say, as long as we have the approval of the board, that we can go ahead and do that. And then the other big change is regarding the shelter payment schedule. And so this is just a breakdown of how we characterize the housing units. So we have residential unit, and so that would be a single occupancy apartment home that someone is living at. And the maximum shelter allowance currently is $600, and that includes rent and utilities. We're proposing to increase it to $700 for an individual or $800 per household that has 2 general assistance clients in there. The idea has always been that if it's a couple, they will live under the same roof. They'll live in a single bedroom apartment, so we don't need to pay any additional amount for those folks. But what we do see is that they do have additional expenses as far as utilities goes. And so we want to do account for that. And so it's not everybody just gets the $800 as long as they're a couple on general assistance. It's that's available if they need it in winter months, summer months, that we can offer up that extra $100 utility stipend. All of our payments, I wanted to note, do go directly to the landlords and directly to the utility companies as well. And then shared living. Previously, shared living was kind of just defined as somebody's living with a landlord. And we had a max benefit that we can authorize was $300 a month. We're seeing that the shared living has really, really increased with our population. And we didn't think that it was very equitable to have a $300 cap because you were living with your landlord, when if you were a roommate situation, we would divide everything up equally, and you would still be eligible for that max benefit. So again, it is just increasing that where they can have the same max benefit as somebody that was living in a residential unit of their own. And then the boarding house and rooming house, previously it was $300 per month. We are proposing an increase to have it be $400 a month for a client or couple, because it's typically the rates that we're seeing are about $100 a week for the rooming and boarding house situation. And this is just a graph showing the last 12 years of what general assistance has paid as far as the maximum shelter allowance available, and then what the HUD fair market rate has been for the efficiency apartments. And that's what we're that's one of the big proposals. The reason behind the proposal is we're trying to align with what the HUD fair market rent is. And so currently it's $698 for an efficiency, and that's why we're proposing the $700. We just, again, noting that that's the max benefit for rent and utilities together, or mortgage and utilities. The next one is we have, our program is, like I said, is based on income and resources, and there are some deductions that we allow for our clients. We would like to add as a deduction from their income being the court-ordered child support. Currently, that language is not in there, and that is something that we do hear from our clients, is that it's not fair that they get that amount counted as income when that goes directly to their child. And we agree with that, and we don't want to discourage them from working or have that be something that prevents them from keeping their house. So we are asking to incorporate that as an allowable deduction. And then also, we previously had 100% of any energy assistance that a client would receive being an allowable deduction. And we are proposing to cap that at $500. And so typically what that is if a client would get energy assistance from the state, we have some clients that have significant balances as far as their credit goes, and general assistance, the current language says that we will still pay even though they have a balance. And so we're proposing that if their balance drops below 500, we will go ahead and pay, but if it's above 500 or more, we will not assist with that utilities yet at that time. And then just the standard housing deduction. Currently, we allow clients to earn $100 that we don't count as income, and we are proposing to increase that to $150, and that just aligns more with what the state's language is. There's just like $143, so we just kind of wanted to make it an even $150. And then exempt resources, equity in their primary residence. It was previously at $35,000. We're proposing to increase it to $50,000. A vehicle as well, we previously exempt vehicles. One vehicle that was valued at $7,000 or less, proposing to increase that to $12,000, and that is to align with the state as well. And then for financial eligibility for cremation and out-of-county transportation, previously we didn't really have any income limits. It was kind of a case-by-case basis. I would like to provide some clarity, and a lot of the programs, statewide, what we looked at for primary health care was as long as folks were at or below the federal poverty guidelines, we would be able to assist them. And so that's what I would like to incorporate as far as the income limits for the cremation program. and the out-of-county transportation. And then the last thing is cremation fee schedule. We have that within our guidelines that every other year we increase the cremation assistance, that the max eligible amount for the cremation assistance based on the consumer price index. And so that is just a change of $10 this guideline review. So it's $1,098 is the max benefit that we can assist with for cremations. So the next steps are we're opening the public hearing to accept any comments, and then what we'll do based on any comments that we receive today is revise any of the guidelines and incorporate the feedback, and then we plan to bring a resolution back to the board on December 7th to approve the guidelines, and those would be effective January 1.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. And thank you for this. We had a Health and Human Service hearing on this, I believe on the 15th, where you presented the draft of this, and it's good work that you and your staff do. Just to recap a few things so that folks have a clear idea of what we're doing here. The questions, I guess, would be in people's minds are, if you start at the beginning, the client count for general assistance over the period of 2016-17 to 2020-2021 have actually gone down from a high in 18-19 of 2,043 to the year-to-date 2021, and we understand we have a month left, of 1,396. At the same time the pandemic's going on, there's been a lot of economic dislocation as a result of that. Do you have a quick maybe opinion on why we've seen this go down during this period?
Well, if you look at our program from 2008, 2009 to now, it's dramatically, it's continued to go down. So as I stated, our program is very much based on how the economy is doing, what the unemployment rate is in the community, and our target population are folks that are homeless, that don't have any income. And so we're not really seeing that big of an impact with our clientele because they didn't have employment previously. We are seeing some new folks that are kind of trickling in that have lost employment. But then we have some folks that, end up eligible for Social Security, and so they fall off the program. And then we also, there's a lot of money in the community right now that's helping with rent and utilities. So I think that those folks that were impacted by COVID-19 have definitely been able to utilize the programs that have been implemented by the city and Douglas County.
And that's a great point. And you and General Assistance have been instrumental in helping us deliver that. We have put forth millions of dollars in rent, utilities, and food assistance during the pandemic. And General Assistance did a great job initially stepping up to help us implement that component relative to the rent assistance. So that makes sense that that would have some impact on this population. They were already very poor, and so being dislocated from the job market wasn't something that impacted them. And we have all these other assistance programs that have come online since the pandemic. So thanks for that. Just a couple of other quick questions. The changes that we're proposing here, and thanks for your excellent PowerPoint on pages 4, 5, and 6, are somewhat overdue in terms of the rent assistance going up. I think it's $100 a month. Is that right?
$100 for an individual, and then a max $200 for a couple with that
Right.
utility stipend.
So the maximum for an individual would be what?
$700.
And the maximum for a couple would be?
$800.
Great. And those are roughly based on some HUD guidelines relative to the costs of rental properties, apartments, whatever, in the nation and the community, right?
Absolutely.
So we're tracking that. We're not making these numbers up ourselves, right?
Not this year, we're not, no.
So that's, kind of what you've been working off of. And I know that we have advocated for this for the last couple of years because as that indicates, maybe lagging just a little bit, but this brings us into line with that. Although average rental prices in the community are significantly above that. And this is, something that is of concern to us, and we are addressing in our
1
other
minute.
rent assistance initiatives that we're using COVID relief dollars on. In addition to that, we have a different category for rooming houses and people who are in boarding houses. And what does that increase?
$100. And so that's factored in. The typical rate that we're seeing are about $100 a month or $100 a week for those rooming houses. And so that's what we are just trying to make it what it is in the community, the prices are.
And then we have some new deductions, as you indicated, for child support and other costs, so that people's income would be more accurately determined and not.
Time.
We'll come back. Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Melissa, as I've said it before, last year, probably a year ago, we really appreciate the good work you've done with the rental substance, that we've tried to supplement to the people. I think in the numbers maybe of the people going down, Nebraska happens to have the lowest unemployment rate in the United States at the current time. It's under 2%. So I think that's a significant factor here, that there are the jobs really available at this time. The other thing I wonder about on the last page, I think, of your presentation, that just a $10 increase in cremation. If some of these aren't enough, be sure you come back to us to talk about some of the more significant needs that might occur. And again, just want to thank you and your staff for what you've done the past year and a half at least, or more.
Thanks.
So thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to ask Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Just to complete where we were going on this, in addition to the deduction expansion, we've got an exemption for $150 of earned income. In Social Security, this would be called substantial gainful activity. And in the Social Security realm, they exempt the same activity to a modest amount so that people can do a couple of things: supplement their very modest subsidy here, but also this helps people if they're transitioning back into the job market to do some job attempts without being penalized for their ongoing. So that's a very positive recognition of the reality. The real concern that I have is relative to the community service fund that general assistance is under in our budget, which shows consistent unspent balances from 2016 to the present. As a matter of fact, the present, and again, we're a month out from the year end, the unspent balance of the general expense budget of $6.2 million is $1.4 million. And at the year end, over the preceding 4 years, the unspent balance of basically a $6 million budget has consistently been, well, I'll give you the exact numbers. In 16, it was $867,000. In 17, it was $466,000. In 18, it was $710,000. In 19, and that's in 1920, it was $615,000. And then in 2021, it's $1.4 million. This is of concern because this happens consistently every year, and I don't think it's due to a lack of need, but possibly the adjustments that we're making here in our guidelines will allow us to more adequately meet the need, where before, and we've talked about this, some of these guidelines, the amounts allowable by us, by general assistance, were too low to meet reality and the reality of the economic need of the people we're trying to serve. So I want to commend you for bringing these to us, because I hope that a year from now, when we look at the same thing, that we have an unspent balance of closer to zero. It's not because there's a diminished need in our community. It's simply how we distribute what we have already set aside for a budget, which hasn't really increased. As a matter of fact, the budget in 2016-17 approved was $6.5 million, and the budget 2020-21 is $6.2 million. So the budget's actually gone down, but I don't think the need has gone down. So I want to commend you for doing this good work. It's some of the best stuff that Douglas County does. You know, taking care of people in dire need is a noble task of government, and it helps us all. So thank you for bringing this. We look forward to more progress in the future, and keep up the good work.
I did just want to add, with our budget is the amount that's spent. That's our entire budget, so it's not just the client direct services. And with that, again, it's hard to predict what our client numbers are going to be. And we do have a lot of clients that are on our program that are approved that have not yet found a place to live. And so they're just receiving the bus tickets and the $25 non-food. And I spoke about this at the Health and Human Services Committee meeting, is, you know, we can increase the rent as much as we want, that there's still the issue with affordable housing in our community. There's still an issue that our clients have evictions, they have criminal past. We are the payer, which is looked down upon in some instances. So we really need to focus on that to be able to make a big difference. We are a small portion of the preventative measures, but there just isn't enough housing for our folks.
Thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
You as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? Melissa, I just have a question about that. Have you projected on your client service budget dollars with these changes, what potentially, even though we don't really know the number of clients year to year, what that will, how much that will increase?
With our current clientele, we have enough in our budget as is to cover the increase, and that was assuming kind of worst case scenario that everybody would, you know, be housed. Everybody, that sounded bad, that's the worst case, but as far as budget wise, worst case, that everybody would be housed and everybody would get that $800, and that just isn't the case, but that is enough within our budget to account for how it currently is. So, but that's with our current clientele. Depending on what happens in the next year, 3-5 years, I can't predict that,
Right,
but
exactly.
for right now, we do have the funds within our budget.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, as we said, we were going, will you put up your very last slide again, just so we can reiterate the timing here, that we're having the public comment right now, and then we will bring it back to the board when?
The plan is December 7th, just depending on kind of the outcome of today, if what feedback we get. But as of right now, that's the plan for the 7th.
Okay, and then correct me, didn't we keep the public hearing open until that December 7th date?
In the past, what we would do is come to the board and just open the public hearing, and then it would be open an entire month, and then we'd come back with our proposals and then close it at that time. This year, what we did is we had our recommendations out right away and had our guidelines, our normal guidelines and our proposals out for review, and had made all the same context as we typically do, and gave people that month to go ahead and review what our proposals are. So although we didn't have the 2 meetings, we left more room open for people to review the actual recommendations that we have.
Okay, so that's all been done. It's kind of in a reverse type of.
Yes, we kind of sped it up a little bit as far as not coming down here to open it and then keep it open the full month. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So with that, anyone else wishing, Karen, can you change it back to the Zoom just in case I don't want to miss anybody on Zoom if they wanted to say anything about these guidelines? All right. With that, then, I will close the public hearing, and our action will be taken at our December 7th board meeting. Thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you.
With that, we will move on to, could you please mute those on Zoom? We will continue with our committees. First is the finance, and it's the budget report as presented. Next, we have an action item on the ARPA funding. There's an approval of a resolution authorizing the use of $3,619,688 in ARPA funds for the HVAC system for the Sheriff's Building and the boiler house generator for the West Campus buildings. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I see that Mr. Leahy is here. If he could just give us an overview on this. This $3.6 million in ARPA funding for the HVAC at the Sheriff's Building and the boiler house generator, I think is amply justified, and you'll see in there that the generator is a 47-year-old generator, and that's a campus that I've been intimately involved with over the last few years, and I know that public property has done a great job of turning it into probably the finest piece of real estate, office real estate that we own. I just wondered on this $3.6 million HVAC appropriation, has this already gone to bid? I notice in here there's a breakout of how it's going to be spent. I was just wondering where it is in the public bidding process.
Jerry Leahy, Public Property. With your approval, we'll go through the process to.
So there'll be a full public bidding process
yes.
following approval here today. That's great. Thank you.
Well, it was a project that qualified and much needed.
Thank you.
Out west there.
It's good to see some of the long deferred maintenance and upgrades. I mean, this is COVID-related upgrades of some of the HVAC that's going to be needed going forward. So thanks for this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jerry, you don't have to stand there if you don't want. Obviously, this is, as co-chair of the Finance Committee, I wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding. Commissioner Kavanaugh alluded to a little bit of it, but clearly it's a core government function. The problem that we ran into, and it's my understanding that something like this wouldn't have been mandatory. Probably would have been needed, but it wouldn't have been mandatory had it not been for the COVID outbreak. The majority of this infrastructure is related to enhancing some air quality. The other thing is, it's not all of it, but it's a significant portion. The weird thing about this is, it's not weird, you can all imagine if you follow county government long enough, a lot of this probably wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't be doing it were it not for COVID, because we would have had to try to come up with this funding. So, Jerry, thanks. We look forward to working through this process and getting this stuff going. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. With that, any other questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next, we'll move to Child and Youth Services. There's one action item. Due to the reduction in the 22-23 community-based juvenile services aid grant funds, $56,376 for the data administrator salary will be paid by Douglas County Administration budget beginning July 1, 2022. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Please vote. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Quick comment. This is a transfer of an expense from what has previously been grant covered to the general fund property tax. And this is something that, I think concerns us all. It also calls for, probably some strategic planning relative to not only juvenile services, but county functions, period, so that we can see going forward, when we pick up these grants, what's going to be the long-term effect to the property taxpayers of Douglas County, because I don't think this is the last one we're going to see. So I just point that out as this is a suggestion that we might want to enter into some robust strategic planning on the part of Douglas County.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a point. These things are, obviously, and I know how important the data administrator is to this position. The point that was just made is a valid one. When we have grant-funded positions, this is just, I'm opining, when we have grant-funded positions and they transition into general-funded positions, I think it's really important, this is just my opinion, I think as time goes on, it could be 8 months, it could be quarterly, it could be 8 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 24 months. I think we need metrics and we need an understanding of where that grant-funded position went, the value that we accrued from that grant-funded position moving to a general-funded position, and actually come to a value add when we're done with the whole thing. So I don't mean to be redundant. That's not exactly what Commissioner Kavanaugh said, but I am, and I hope other commissioners would agree, I think we can get those numbers. And when we look at those numbers, these are not just plug and play. We get a bunch of grant funding. The state used to do it all the time. As a matter of fact, well, I digress. I just think we need to keep a close eye on it. And not to say that we don't need this position. I think we need to look at metrics after about 12 months and really decide whether there's going to be the value add that we thought that we would accrue. So that's just my statement about it. And I plan to do exactly that, and I hope the other commissioners do as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or comments? All right, with that, please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
With that, we will move to the Human Resources, the weekly personnel report as presented. And then legislation, we do have a Human Resources meeting following our county board meeting, and so we'll talk about legislation there. I have been asked for a point of privilege for Commissioner Mike Friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be fun. I used to be a sports writer about 8 years, so I'm going to do the media's job for them right now, because I don't think they do a very good job anymore. I'd like to congratulate Coach Cam Lenhart and the Bennington Badgers. Last night, Dylan Mostek rushed for 218 yards and scored 4 touchdowns. The Bennington Badgers defeated Aurora 42-14 at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln to win the Class B State Football Championship. Coach Scott Frost doesn't listen to this. He's too busy. Give Dylan, he's a senior, give him a scholarship. 218 yards. You saw him last night. Do it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. We do have need for an executive session for litigation and union negotiations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And before we adjourn, I just want to remind everybody that we do have our mental health listening session tonight via Zoom, and it's at 6 p.m., so I hope you can join us. The topic will be how do we go about reducing the stigma of mental illness? So with that,
Chair Borgeson, would you add legal advice to that group for executive session as well, please?
litigation, union negotiation, and legal advice.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right, please. What, you want to talk about executive session? All right. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Recording stopped.
Second.
Please vote.
All right.
vote yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0. We are adjourned at 12:02 p.m.